Welcome, everybody, to the Mormon Newscast. Happy Monday to all of you. I'm joined by Radio Free Mormon, Rebecca Biblioteca. How are the two of you this fine evening?
Fabulous.
Great.
Excellent. Well, let's jump into it, folks. We've got a great show lined up for you. A lot of stuff happening in the news. So I'll put this up on the stage. There's the thumbnail with Taylor Frankie Paul there holding the wilted rose. ABC cancels Mormon wife. Of course, she's a single Mormon wife. We'll get to that here in just a second. That is our lead story, and Rebecca Biblioteca will be bringing that to us. Next up is new LDS transgender policy. I'll be mentioning that. Then we've got Rebecca back on talking about LDS women finally allowed to serve as Sunday school presidents. I'm sure a lot of you saw that come across the news this week. We'll talk about it, share our thoughts with you. Next up, Utah AI regulation bill. Radio Free Mormon will be bringing that to us, followed by the Journal of Mormon Polygamy, BYU training canceled last minute. That will be Rebecca Biblioteca. Ex-BYU wide receiver Kingston's pretrial hearing bumped. Monitor removed. That'll be Radio Free Mormon. LDS Church endorses first female chaplain in Canada. I'll be doing that along with the one Netflix show exposing Warren Jeff's successor. So with that, let's jump into the first story and Rebecca Biblioteca.
Oh, here we go. The messy, messed up Mormon moment is what I am calling this. Now, I've been watching The Bachelor for 21 years, not every single time, but I was there for the very first one, Trista and Ryan. If you guys remember that, that really dates me. These headlines: Taylor Frankie Paul's Bachelorette season canceled. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, we're going to go through it a little bit, because Taylor Frankie Paul is one of the Secret Lives of Mormon Wives women and the original founder of MomTok. And of course, this is all part of the Mormon moment, because Mormonism is baked into all of these programs. And if you remember at the end of last week's newscast, I said, don't forget to watch, the new Bachelorette with Taylor Frankie Paul is going to be on Sunday. Well, it's not. And I'm going to tell you why, but these are just a fraction of the headlines. They were everywhere. There was a really good article, I thought, in the Salt Lake Tribune that kind of went through a brief timeline of exactly who this person is. If you have no idea and you want to be able to talk to your kids or grandkids about it, I'm going to give you a little rundown so you can understand why it matters to the Mormon moment and what Mormons are saying, faithful Mormons who are actually weighing in kind of gleefully over this situation. It's kind of interesting. So Taylor Frankie Paul started MomTok, which is a group of moms. I believe they were in Draper. I knew they were kind of over in my neck of the woods in Utah, who in 2020, 2021 thought it'd be really fun to jump on TikTok and just start dancing, empowering women, being there for each other, and putting across a positive message. And there's a picture of some of them. There they are, just dancing, and they kind of got to be pretty popular. Had either of you ever heard of MomTok 6 years ago? Probably not. No. Nope. There you go. And a lot of people hadn't, but there were enough people following it that when in 2022, Taylor Frankie Paul made another TikTok where she was not dancing, and she told everybody that indeed a lot of the MomTok moms and their husbands had been soft swinging together. She came out and confessed this and said that her marriage was over. She had caught feelings. That's a new word, a new phrase that I learned, for another one of the men in the group, and it all kind of went to hell in a handbasket. So this really put them on the radar, because people are always curious about Mormons. They're curious about sister wives scenario. They, of course, think Mormons are very straight-laced. So this idea that they would be doing something, non-conventional was a little intriguing. And also, what is soft swinging? Everybody wanted to know. And so there was a whole bunch of, interest in that, a lot of things in different social media about that. And I think we reported on it. I think when they decided to make it into Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, because this would have been too early, 2022. So that's exactly what happened. The next thing we knew, we all thought, oh, okay, well, this is just a hot mess scenario going on here in Utah, is we hear that they're going to be getting a show, right? Because it's so intriguing and so interesting. And they've added some more women to the original group, and it's going to be called Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. And I do remember when we first started reporting on that. Do you guys remember that at all? Mm-hmm. Any recollection?
Vaguely.
Yes. Vaguely.
It's so Mormon. And this is the Mormon moment in terms of people are interested in Mormonism and Mormon people doing weird things, and they will tune in to watch them.
Yep, that's it. You absolutely hit it on the head. That is what the Mormon moment is. So there's news that there's going to be a show, Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. They've added some more women. They're all Mormon adjacent. Some are active wearing garments, going to the temple. Others have kind of stepped away, but it's seeped in Mormonism, and the women have been culturally informed by being raised in Mormonism. Well, before the show could even air, there was this very disturbing thing that happened where Taylor Frankie Paul I believe she was actually, yes, arrested. There were charges for domestic violence at her house. There's a picture of her outside, her boyfriend Dakota, and we just sort of learned hazy details, some throwing of some chairs, some things like that. She was intoxicated. This is the entire police report, which if anybody cares, they can freeze on it and they can read it. But it was just the officers interviewing Dakota and Taylor. And of course, neighbors had called it in. There was a lot of yelling and screaming. At one point, Taylor was up on top of Dakota's truck and then throwing a wooden play set. It was just, it was just a lot. But again, all we did is we heard these allegations and we heard that she was going to be put on parole and then the show was going to go forward. We were kind of like, well, that's interesting. Still going to do the show, even though all this happened. And I think that made a lot of us go, well, maybe it wasn't as bad as they said. Maybe some things were embellished. We don't really know. Here's some more of the police report. So the first, and I guess if you look back here, I don't know if it says anything RFM, but as I understand it from the article, there were charges and they were kind of deferred, held in abeyance. Is that what that means? And then she was on parole for 3 years. Do you have anything to say about that? Just that vague amount of information I gave you?
Yeah, it sounds like it's a light kind of sentence. Up here, it'd be called a deferred sentence. Up
Yeah.
here, you plead guilty, and then it's deferred for a couple of years to make sure you do everything you're supposed to do treatment-wise and not get into any more trouble. And if you do that successfully, it'll be dismissed at the end of it. Other places may just continue the whole case over. But basically, it's a way to usually avoid jail time, but get a little treatment and hopefully clean up your act.
Yeah, and I think that was the case here. And I think that's why we all thought, there must not have been too much to it. She was put on a parole for 3 years, just has to kind of keep her nose clean and not have anything else happen except for a minor traffic ticket. And her child was involved in this scenario, witnessing the domestic violence and then kind of accidentally being hit by a chair, is what it said in the report. But she didn't lose custody. Nothing like that happened. So I think most of us just thought, well, I mean, ABC's continuing with the show. She didn't lose custody. How bad could it be? Well, we're about to find out how bad it actually was. So the first season of Secret Lives of Mormon Wives comes out in 2024. Of course, you guys know that I've been reporting on this ad nauseum here on the newscast because I do see it as an important Mormon moment with the new kind of millennial Mormon. And down here, I have the church's statement. If you guys remember that, they didn't say anything specifically about the Secret Lives, but that was the same time that American Primeval was coming out.
Mhm.
And they said, there are some depictions of us in the media that are not accurate. Don't pay attention. But they actually did make a statement about being careful on social media. I think they also sensed that a Mormon moment was on its way. Do you remember that statement, Bill, when we went over that?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah, that was kind of interesting. So, all right. So we have the first season here, Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, and it is an absolute hit. It goes crazy. People cannot get enough of these women and their drama and Utah and swig drinks and going to church and holding baby blessings and the baby daddies and the patriarchy was another thing that kind of shone through in the Secret Lives of Mormon Wives because other people in the world weren't used to these, Mormon type men, right? And they were like, what are those husbands doing? So anyway, it was just a train wreck in a lot of ways and absolutely fascinating. I have to say I have watched every episode of every season simply for research purposes for the newscast. Yeah, that's my excuse there. So then we have 2025, right? The second season comes out of Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. Taylor Frankie Paul and the same man, Dakota, that she was involved in that original domestic violence with in 2023, have a child together. They're not married, but they do have a child. They're on again, off again. That's a lot of the drama in the second season. And then we have a third season that is released very quickly in November. And that's when it's all very exciting. And it's announced that Taylor Frankie Paul, even though she has this on again, off again baby daddy, she's going to be the Bachelorette. Now, RFM was asking me, what the heck is The Bachelorette? And I'm assuming a lot of you guys know it's a program that's been on for over 21 years, and it kind of rotates. When there's a bachelor on who gets engaged to a woman, usually somebody who comes in second place is the next season's Bachelorette. They vie for the attentions of 30 or so people, and at the end, they're supposed to find their, one true companion.
So that's the whole point of this then. That's the whole point of the show.
To get engaged, to get married. Yes.
I'm just trying to get my head around 30 guys lining up to marry this woman.
I know. Well, and this is also what's interesting. Again, some of us kind of went, well, that's really interesting. She does have that weird thing in her past, but that didn't seem to be much, I don't think. And then we thought, she does have 3 children, and she is, from the show on again, off again with Dakota, they can't seem to leave each other alone. So is she really Bachelorette material? But again, we all kind of assumed, well, ABC must know what they're doing. And of course, huge publicity, right? That she's going to be on there. So she is going to film this, and the season is going to come out. She films it successfully. Of course, they keep it secret. Did she get engaged? Did she find her one and only?
So they filmed the whole season? I mean, the whole series for this
It's already done. That's why this is so shocking. It's already
Bachelorette.
done. Yes. The Bachelorette is already filmed. It's already ready. I don't know that it's completely all edited. I did hear that they sometimes maybe do 3 at a time, and then they'll change editing depending on, fans gravitating toward a certain person. Maybe they'll put that person forward. But yeah, it was all ready to go. And during season 4 of Secret Lives, that was announced, and it's all ready to go. And now they're filming season 5, right? All of a sudden, last week, there are these headlines that say filming is halted, right, for the next season of Secret Lives of Mormon Wives because Taylor Frankie Paul is involved in recent allegations of domestic violence, and the other women are not comfortable filming with her anymore, or they want to protect their careers from exposure to her anymore. So filming grinds to a halt, right? So there's another domestic violence incident with the same couple, Taylor Frankie Paul, also known as TFP, and Dakota Mortensen. And this time, I believe the allegations, again, when I talk about this, it seems to be very one-sided as far as the actual physical part of it. Taylor is the aggressor physically. There hasn't really been anything that has come out showing that Dakota, the male, has been the aggressor. This is one of those situations where the female is aggressive. And sometimes that is hard for people to wrap their head around, and really understand what it is. So in this incident, which was the 24th and the 25th of February, just a few weeks ago, apparently she tried to choke him with a chain, like a necklace. And apparently, and I don't know if you know anything about this, RFM, I was reading about it, but when choking happens in domestic violence, statistics show that can escalate really quickly further down the road. And so they take that very seriously, and that can have more of a weight to it when they're considering what to do. So it says, according to court documents, let's see. Yeah, there it was. There was a choking incident. So anyway, the women said, we're not comfortable filming with her anymore. And then right after this happened, right after these charges come out and everybody finds out that she had some kind of an altercation the end of February, the video is released from that incident back in February 2023 that no one had seen before. And this happened on March 19th. The video is put out. No one has seen the video. We've just read those descriptions. In your experience, RFM, in trial, a video is very different from just reading a very clinical description, isn't it?
Yeah, and if a picture is worth 1,000 words, a video is worth 1,000,000.
Yeah. Nobody had even seen pictures of this. And in fact, she's been married before. She has 2 children with, what's his name? Tate Paul. And he had asked to see this video. A lot of people said, why would you not get your children out of the home if you knew about this back in 2023? He was not allowed to see the video. And it was very much downplayed by Taylor and I think maybe even law enforcement. So nobody really knew the extent of it. But somehow, of course, everybody's accusing Dakota. I feel like I'm talking about a soap opera here, a Mormon soap opera. Everyone's accusing Dakota of having put that video out, selling it to TMZ. We don't know where it came from. We just know that no one was allowed to see it prior to March 19th. And the video is extremely hard to watch. It's extremely difficult. She's very intoxicated. There's lots of screaming. She's attacking him over and over. He keeps saying, please let me leave. Please let me leave. Her daughter is on the couch. And when she throws one of the 3 chairs that she throws, the chair hits the child. And the child starts crying. At that point, a lot of people have to stop watching. It's very difficult to hear a child crying. And Taylor does not go and help her child. At that point, Dakota says, go help your child. She's hurt. She won't. She goes back at him, keeps attacking. I mean, it's the worst, one of the worst things I think I've ever seen. And at that point, on the very same day, the 19th, it's canceled. Her premiere of The Bachelorette that is supposed to happen in just a few days, it's a Thursday and Sunday, it's over. They're not going to do it. And they put it out to all the media that it's canceled. And on that very same day, it's very interesting. Dakota goes to get a restraining order. And while he's there at the courthouse, he runs into her first husband, also trying to get a restraining order. Completely unplanned. There they are. I know. It's actually not even really funny. And they both get their restraining orders. And he also asked that he would be given custody of their son together. They have the little boy together. And he did get custody until a further trial date, which is going to happen in April. So it's just very interesting. Let's see, what did I say here? Yep, there it is. Lots of video. Yeah. And again, everybody's just reeling from this. Nobody knows what to think. And the Mormon moment, it couldn't get messier. Now, she put out a statement here. And she kind of basically said that she has been being abused for years mentally. And it finally came to, kind of trying to paint him as some kind of, an aggressor. But it's really difficult when you have the charges from February, end of February, new charges. And then you have these prior charges and you have this video. She's been spotted here in Utah. She's kind of doing her own thing. She's been engaging with fans on social media and just saying, well, of course, I'm still out here. What do you want me to do? Stare at a wall? There she is again, out shopping. There's a picture of the banner being taken down. Now, this is the gentleman who she did, I guess, get engaged to at the end of The Bachelorette. Like you asked, RFM. Yes, it's all done. It was going to be aired. This is Doug Mason, 28 years old, an ocean lifeguard trainer and musician from San Diego, California. However, it looks like in January, they broke it off. He flew out to Utah to visit her again, and it's over. And she's back with Dakota. Hence the incident that happened in February.
Does that have anything to do with their canceling the season? Has this happened before? Where
Never.
they break off the engagement before the season runs?
Yes. The engagements have been broken off before, of course. Often they'll wait till the season's played, but the engagements do break off. But this has never happened that a season has been canceled. And of course, it's going to cost ABC millions of dollars, advertising and people that have already paid for sponsorship on the show. I mean, it's just unprecedented. And a lot of people are saying The Bachelorette is canceled. Is Secret Lives over too? Is this part of the Mormon moment going to go away? And what I thought was interesting is that here's a little thing I came across that Jasmine did on Saturday. Woke up bright and early and did a live on Is It All Over? She's done a couple things about this. So she seems pretty interested, and you may be like, hey, the Mormon moment, at least for these guys, is going to be over. So that just kind of gets you guys up to speed. Let me see if there's any.
I feel like there's a place in the cast now that Jasmine could maybe take over.
Well, it's true. She's always saying these aren't real Mormon women, and let's show everybody what a real Mormon woman is. So anyway, it's very messy, but I think RFM, your expertise is interesting because she was on probation for 3 years until, next August, I think. Yeah. Would these latest charges in February cause a problem for her as far as having to go back to go to jail or to lose custody? What does this mean exactly?
Well, probation doesn't have anything to do with custody unless the family law judge says it does. And the film was enough for him to give immediate temporary custody to the dad pending trial. He switched everything. I'm guessing she had custody before this.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you're throwing chairs at the priesthood in your house and you end up hitting your kid in the face, you're probably going to lose custody really quick. And that's what happened here. Yeah. Her being on parole for 3 years, this is a new charge. I'm sure it's a violation of a parole. She will have to answer to consequences for the new charge, as well as any consequences for the violation of her parole on the previous charge.
Yeah. No, thanks for explaining that, because, it is interesting. And for people that say, oh, why even talk about this? She's not really LDS. Well, the last season ended in a big baby blessing of her child. So yes, Mormonism is all throughout this program and the scenario. is Mormon moment. So. All right, Bill. I'm not sure if you're there, and I'm
We've got a huge
feedback.
echo going right now, Rebecca. Can you hear it?
Sorry. I'm getting a lot of echo. I don't know if anybody else can hear that.
I'm going to take that off for a second. We've got all these echoes going, Bill.
Yeah, I don't think that's it. So I don't know what it is that's causing it.
I think
is it happening with me right now?
You're good.
You're good.
Okay.
I'm not.
Okay. I don't hear you echoing, and I don't hear me in my ears, but maybe you
That's
guys.
strange.
I think it's Rebecca, maybe on your end. So
I don't know. That's strange. Yeah, I can hear myself talking back to myself.
It's driving me crazy.
I know.
yeah.
Sorry.
It's hard enough for me to say things once.
Now you're echoing too, RFM.
Yeah, I know. I hear it.
All
Why
right.
was that all of a sudden?
I don't know.
It's a ghost.
Bill leaves and everything goes to.
Yeah, it started rubbing you left, Bill.
I can try to leave again. Let's see what happens here.
Okay.
It's always
let's
something.
get you back.
Okay, do we have an echo? We have no echo. Do you ever an echo,
Is there an
RFM?
echo? No echo now.
No echo.
Okay. All right. Let's just. Okay.
I think Bill
Well,
has the next
hopefully
story.
It'll remain
Otherwise,
this
we
way
can
when
continue.
Bill comes on. Now, let me see. I'm also going to put this on the stage. Can you talk and see if there's an echo, Rebecca?
Yep, I don't hear an echo right now. Do you hear an echo?
Nope, no echo. I saw
Nope.
Bill below, but now I don't.
Good. But now he's gone.
This is the fun of, what do you call it? Oh, here he comes.
Live studio.
Bill?
My StreamYard froze up, so hopefully you can
Okay.
hear me now.
I don't hear an echo now, and we did not hear one while you were gone.
Great.
So
Let's roll with this.
I think we're okay. Bill, any last thoughts from you on all of this complete hot mess? And then we'll move on to another story.
Yeah, I'll just say I could see this coming a million miles away. When this show started, you take these kids pretty much on MomTok who are becoming famous for putting out stuff of no substance at all. You put them in front of a camera as if their points of view and life behaviors all matter. They get a maybe an embellished image of themselves, and I think it was just destined to be a disaster. So that's what I see in it. Any other further comments from either of you? And otherwise, I'll jump into the next story.
I think that's what the folks want, is a disaster.
Yeah, that's what reality TV is. And by the way, all the networks have figured this out, that reality TV is so much cheaper to do than making a movie or a TV show. You put people at a very low cost in front of the camera. By the way, a show like Love is Blind or Married at First Sight, I know people who have had interactions with people who were suggested for the show, didn't end up making it, and they would say that those people's lives were too much in order. So I think they often look for a little drama to put it in front of the TV camera and to have it be just that, a lot of drama that gets a lot of views and ends up, I think, wrecking lives. And maybe in this instance, she did her own trouble, but I think the show sometimes can add to that. Well, without further ado, I'll just go into my story here. I'll just note here, a Reddit post got some notice this week with someone claiming they may be the first transgender man to serve a full-time LDS mission while already transitioned. According to the post, they had transitioned prior to baptism and were able to serve because they kept that history private and passed as a male. So as far as the church was concerned, this person, when the church encountered them, they were already transitioned to a man, but was born biologically a woman. And if this is true, this would make this the first known case of a transgender person transitioning before or during their mission rather than after. Rebecca, you sent this earlier in the week, but I'll just note up in the top right-hand corner, this is the Reddit post. It says, "I believe I'm the first trans man to serve an LDS mission. Please read this first." The title says it all. As far as I know, I might be the first trans man to serve a full-time mission. While I know others have transitioned after their service, I am doing it during. The only reason this is possible is that I've kept my transition private. I was baptized about 4 years ago, already having transitioned, and I passed completely. I am a man, and I will always be. I believe God loves me and made me this way. It goes on, but I'll tell you, I couldn't find more of it, and I'll tell you here in a second what happened. But I will note, this post who knows if this is real or not? I assume it is. This isn't necessarily newsworthy, but what came next is. And so around the same time, new attention was drawn to updated church handbook guidance, reaffirming that temple ordinances and participation are tied to a biological sex at birth. And that if ordinances are performed under a different gender, they are considered invalid and must be redone with first presidency approval. Now, I'll just say it's a really strange coincidence that these two things come out at the same time, where there is a transgender man, boasting's the wrong word, but notifying the public and ex-Mormon Reddit that they are currently serving a mission as a transgender man, and that they were baptized as a male, that they went through the temple as a male, serving a mission as a male, but were born biologically female. And then the church comes out with this handbook update, 38.2.6.6. A temple ordinance does not match the person's biological sex at birth. It's amazing, by the way, how much rigmarole church leaders have to create decade after decade, making these little additions to the handbook to the point where everything has some amount of administration to it. And all of the Christ ministering seems to be slowly disappearing. But I'll say here, it says all temple ordinances are received according to a person's biological sex at birth. If a person receives a temple ordinance for a gender that does not match his or her biological sex at birth, that ordinance is not valid. When this occurs, the temple ordinance must be repeated so the person receives the correct ordinance. First presidency approval is required before repeating the ordinance. Any thoughts from the two of you on this handbook change?
Rebecca, I'm having trouble understanding exactly what it is they're getting at. And I think they may be being vague for a purpose. They're talking about temple ordinances. And are not virtually all of those the same for a man as for a woman?
Yeah, I think they're just saying that as a smokescreen. And I swear, I've tracked this for a while, that there used to be something that if you had transitioned well before you ever met missionaries or joined the church, that was all well and good, and you could participate as the person that you were. I think the bigger issue here is the priesthood, right? This person has the priesthood. They're not really saying that either. So yeah, this, I don't know that there's a lot that's been updated. Has there, Bill? They're just kind of re-clarifying how it is. And this post was so interesting when I found it, because, the person kept saying, oh, I can't wait to go on my mission. And the people in the chat were like, why would you do that when you understand what the church is doing to a person who is a person like you are, So they couldn't understand why this person was excited to serve a mission, knowing the treatment of transgender individuals within the church. So there was a lot of confusion there. But I don't know if anybody can remind me in the chat what the handbook used to say, or if it was different, but I swear there was something about having transitioned earlier before, meeting the missionaries, that you could continue. But maybe I'm wrong. That's what I was Googling before. I may have to try to look that up.
Maybe what they mean is simply when you start at the very beginning and you either go into the women's locker room or the men's locker room and get a woman's new name or a man's new name.
That's true.
And then you sit on the, if you're a man, you sit on the right side, looking at the front, audience right, and audience left for the women. And even though you receive basically the same token, signs, everything, maybe that's what they mean. If you receive it for a different gender than the one with which you were born, then it doesn't count, and you can't do it again the right way unless the first presidency says you can.
Yeah, and you would think this would be wrapped up with getting the priesthood and other ordinances that happen outside the temple. Yes. The church, for whatever reason, felt a need to add this in. And again, I can see from their point of view, if they want to hold that stance, I mean, that's their right to do so. But from their point of view, it's this kind of thing that they're trying to stop, which is somebody joining the church. Again, their framing, not mine, but under the guise of being a man when they're born biologically a female. They go through the discussions with the missionaries, presenting as a male, get baptized as a male, get the priesthood as a male, go to the temple as a male. And the church is trying at least on the temple part of it, to say, well, that doesn't count. You have to do it again, start over, do not pass go, do not collect $200. And getting first presidency approval, as we well know in these situations, isn't the simplest of matters. They're creating a stop, a pause, and a chance to check in about these things for a reason.
Is there any kind of handbook policy about the priesthood, getting the priesthood if you're trans?
Yeah, I would have
Yeah.
to look. I imagine there is, but why they didn't lump these together in the same section doesn't make sense to me.
At first, I thought that's what this would be, but it clearly refers only to temple ordinances.
Correct.
Yeah, I
And
know we've talked about it before, the priesthood issue. I remember a couple of years ago we did. And it is interesting they don't put that together here, because that's the more problematic part, I think, the priesthood.
yeah, I think that would be the most problematic of all of this, because you stop that one thing from happening and none of the rest of it can happen. Okay, I just want to note, though, I tried to go back and read this Reddit post.
Gone.
I will note here before go ahead, RFM.
It could happen the other way.
Yes, you not get the priesthood because you're a transgender female.
Right. And so you wouldn't be expecting to get it anyway. And that wouldn't be something that would be a flag for anybody to go to the temple or not.
Yes, the priesthood one would catch transgender males and disqualify their ordinances. And this one would disqualify transgender females from being able to participate. And that might be why they added it. I will note before I mention clicking that Reddit post and trying to read more, that for both believing and former Latter-day Saints, this moment has been building for a while. The church has increasingly clarified in recent years that gender is fixed at birth and has tightened policies around transgender members, including limits on ordinances and callings and participation if someone transitions socially or medically. I will note, Elder Oaks mentioned maybe 4 years ago or so, 3 years ago, that there was still work to be done on the issue of transgender. What that means, if that means something like what we're talking about here, or whether there is additional policies or doctrines to come out, we shall see. At the same time, real people are still navigating their faith, identity, and belonging inside that system, sometimes quietly finding ways to stay in. That gap between church policy and lived experience places front and center the human reality where individuals are trying to reconcile who they are with what they've been taught, often in ways that the system wasn't really designed to handle. And I'll just note, when you go back to early church history, there are so many issues that leaders of that day had no clue they would encounter or didn't even know to address. And over time, the church handbook has gotten thicker and thicker and thicker as church leaders feel the need to address every jot and tittle in the law. So when I went to click that, here's what I got. Whether related to the announced handbook change or not, that Reddit post was shortly after deleted by its author. I cannot read it now, so I can't show you any more of that post. I think that's the end of my story here, but I do want to check in with you both and just see your thoughts maybe on the transgender issue within the church generally and what this does to impact any of that.
Yeah, I think I took screenshots of that post. So I'll have to look for those and put them up somewhere. But you can still read the comments and reactions to the post, even when the person deletes it. So it is very interesting. But no, this issue is, I believe, going to be a huge part of the undoing of the church. And I say that because I talk to a lot of people who've stepped away, a lot of people my age, right? Which are like, why the heck would you, you've come this far. Why would you do it now? I will tell you that a lot of them say, my son is trans. My daughter is trans. The parents are leaving with the children over the treatment of the children. That didn't used to happen in the past, but it's happening now. And if they're doubling down on all these convoluted policies, and I'm going to have to look this up because I swear they're doing some switching around. It's very confusing what they're doing with the treatment of people. And it just, it's heartbreaking for families and for individuals. But I will say that so many people I talk to, this is the issue, either children or friends, that they are finally just saying, I can't anymore because of the treatment, of of certain people. And so that should be terrifying to the church. People are choosing love, they're choosing their friends, they're choosing their family, not these weird policies.
I'm just trying to think how difficult it would be to conceal one's gender under the circumstances of serving a mission, being at the MTC, taking the showers at the shower trees. At least they were shower trees back when I was there almost 50 years ago.
Yeah, I don't think that would be a simple matter. So who knows? All right. Well, let's move on to the next story. Rebecca, this was another big thing that happened in the church this week. This is the handbook change on Sunday school presidencies.
Woohoo! I almost wonder if they didn't put this out to detract from some of the other unpleasant changes in the handbook, right? Or sometimes they do that, right? Or something else coming. So yes, and this was the top story probably at the beginning of the week. General Handbook update emphasizes ordinances and covenants and adjusts ward Sunday school presidencies. Oh my goodness. You can see how big this was everywhere. I took some screenshots here of some of the headlines, but everybody was talking about the fact that now women can serve as the Sunday school president on the ward level, as long as they have counselors that are also women, right? You're not going to have any kind of a mixed presidency. Men can also serve with male counselors. So it's going to be up to the bishop, to decide who's available and, what he feels inspired to do. If it's going to be a female Sunday school president or a male Sunday school president. Now, when you get to the stake level, the stake Sunday school president is still a high counselor, so he is going to be male. And of course, when you get to the tip top, the general Sunday school presidency, those of course are all male. So I look at this as, the same as passing out towels. They're throwing a bone. Something they should have done a long time ago. And it's great because this means women will be able to supervise men as they do in primary. So that's kind of a step forward, but I don't really think it deserves the accolades that it's getting. And also how everyone keeps saying, oh, I've waited for this. I've waited for this, on the faithful side. Have you really waited for this? And if they can change it now, just like tank top garments, why couldn't they change it a week ago or a year ago or 10 years ago or 20 years ago? That is the kind of thing that these headlines brings up where people go, what? Women couldn't be Sunday school presidents? It's just a bad look. So here's the letter. I don't think we need to go through the whole thing, but this was read, and it was also a handbook update. I've created this image of a lovely woman, Sunday school president. It's so exciting. There she is, Miss America, the Sunday school president. But, people are excited on the faithful side to be able to give more and serve more and more forward-facing roles for women. What did you guys think, RFM first and then Bill, when you first heard this announcement or saw it? Because it was everywhere. It was big.
It's so big. Every move in the right direction, I think we have to cheer on, even though it may be baby steps down the street, and even though it may be 2026, and even though it may just be the ward Sunday school president, which is the most nothing job in every ward. They have nothing to do. It's actually one step down from being the ward greeter.
Yeah.
These guys do nothing. I remember the last ward Sunday school president that I knew, a friend of mine, he would actually carry a briefcase to church to make himself look important, like he was doing something. There's nothing in the briefcase, of course, but it looked good. And as far as that announcement goes, I just want you to know that when I heard that announcement that women could now be ward Sunday school presidents, I sat down on a pile of dirt and I wept.
Wow. A dramatic moment, RFM. My goodness, Bill. What did you think when you first heard?
Well, I knew this was coming. Back in 2019, I put out a post, and it was an episode as well, called Take Your Vitamin Pills. Remember Nelson saying, take your vitamins and get some rest, because the ongoing restoration was about to open up full go. And so at the time, I talked about the situation at the City Creek Mall and also the Gateway Mall and that closing, and there being some alleged inside information. But part of that episode was I also notified the audience of predictions, essentially, seeing around the corner. And number 17, adjust callings that have room to not require priesthood to allow for female leadership. Example, Sunday school presidency. So I saw it before they did.
You're seeing around corners, Bill. What does that make you?
Well, I don't think that's how they define prophet in the church. They say that, but these guys don't see anything. So I will just say it was just a coincidence, just some good luck.
Not everybody defines a prophet as a guy who can see around corners, but Sherry do.
Sherry do, Sherry did. That's right. And as long as you wrote it down with your lighted pen, I think you're golden. You are a prophet. That's exactly right.
I just gotta find some woman to wake up in the middle of the night with me and take notes for me.
That's right. Say it's happening and send her to the couch, whatever that all meant. That was very strange. I wonder if Wendy misses that. I don't know. So anyway, I think a lot of us looked around at what could a woman seamlessly slide into as far as appearing to have more responsibility or actually having more responsibility. And of course, the Sunday school president. Well, now this is interesting because I was going to say does not have to have the Melchizedek priesthood. It does say in this update that if the president is a man, he does have to have the Melchizedek priesthood. So that doesn't make any sense to me at all. A woman with no priesthood can serve, yet an Aaronic priesthood man cannot serve. So I think maybe they ought to take some issue with that. So
here's a stranger one, Rebecca. Young men's president does not need to be a Melchizedek priesthood holder.
Oh, I didn't know that.
An adult man without the priesthood interacting with children. We've already seen this year enough of these moments. Probably still want to have that be a Melchizedek priesthood holder, but does it say Sunday school president needs to be a Melchizedek priesthood holder? Okay.
That's what I thought was very strange. Either no priesthood, it's like all or nothing, right? That way. So, but again, I think, and I'll talk about this in a minute, we all know the real reason, the lack of Melchizedek priesthood holders, right? In any given ward. And women have so much to give and so much energy and ready to do it. And they are just going to have to start utilizing women. Despite what that matrix said, remember this 2 years ago when it came out, the makeup of a ward, what is needed? And it went through all the positions that were needed. It did not mention women at all. No women on paper are needed to run an LDS ward, but in this case, they have given them something to do. So this kind of goes through what I already said. The bishop feels inspired, gives the calling, has to be, woman and women counselors, male with Melchizedek priesthood and male counselors. Now, what does the Sunday school president do? Because you're right. In my experience, what the Sunday school president does and has since I was a kid is shoo you out of the hall into class, right? Get to class, time to get to class. And I'm not even kidding. When I was a grown ass adult, they would still do this to me. Time to get to class. And I just kind of look at them like, I am 15 years older than you are. What the? I mean, really, in my experience, Sunday school presidents are kind of on the annoying side. I don't know if you guys feel that way. And no offense to any of you that have been Sunday school presidents, but according to this, they can serve on the ward council. Now that's interesting. More women on the ward council. Let's do the math. Relief Society, Sunday school primary, 3 women, right? Then you got the bishopric and the elders quorum president. So that's a kind of even matched group. Now that might be interesting. Perhaps the women would not be afraid to speak up or speak out without having somebody like, say, Elder Gilbert to be able to have inspiration that a woman wants to speak and then call on her. This could be great. There could be more input from women on ward councils. Oversee efforts to improve gospel learning, teaching at home, organize the classes, putting those together, support, encourage, and instruct the teachers, lead teacher council meetings, encourage teachers, work with teachers, keep attendance. And correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't Sunday school only every other Sunday? Isn't that how it works now? That it's young men, young women? Yeah. So really, it's a very reduced responsibility that it's only every other week, if you want to look at it that way. But at least they'll be doing something. Now, I love Jana Reese. She put out an awesome article in Religion News Service that was then picked up by the Tribune. Her headline here is Mormon Women Can Now Be Sunday School Presidents. And I'm just going to read a couple of things that she said because she just has such a great way of saying it. She says, in this way, I think calling women to the Sunday school presidency is rather a strategic trial balloon. And I think we can all see this of sorts for the church. It may not change much. Local bishops still have the option of continuing with the all-male Sunday school presidencies of the past if they wish. And it will be interesting to see how long it takes for women to actually be called to more conservative areas, if it happens at all. And I'll add to what she's saying. Once women are called, will it be a woman's calling? Will a man feel demoted if he is then called after a woman has served? There are those kinds of dynamics, as we know, that happen in wards. She says women who do serve will do so quietly, because this is a quiet sort of a calling, like RFM said. It's non-threatening. This is a calling that almost is never out front unless the Sunday school teacher realizes that her laptop isn't connecting and she needs help. Exactly right. But here's the other thing that Jana really took issue with, and I saw a lot of people taking issue with, and you'll see the picture of Billy Graham there, and you'll probably know where I'm going on this. She says about that, right? This issue of the female and female counselors, right? No mixing. Says, I'm celebrating today's announcement and the potential for women's expanded service in the church, but I'm also frustrated by the continued single sex focus of the policy. The church has its own version of Billy Graham rule. The evangelist famous dictated that he would never be alone with a woman who wasn't a family member. Graham saw this as a way of preserving sexual purity and resisting temptation. Yeah, because, just being alone in a room, that's what you're going to do. Critics pointed out it also prevented women from serving in any meaningful leadership capacities within Billy Graham's Evangelistic Association because the logistics were impossible. And this is what we're talking about in the LDS Church, too. She says the new Latter-day Saint policy wants to similarly avoid even a hint of impropriety by having only women serve together or only men. Never both together. I can see the wisdom in this because we are a people who regard any non-marital sexual relation as a sin. I can also see the value in single-sex space in some of our lives, and I'm a proud graduate of a single-sex college. What I object to, though, is the assumption that women and men in 2026 can't work together without the specter of sex always being present. We do this in the workplace all the time. Is the church place different? And if it is, are there other solutions, 2 women and 2 men, that could overcome the all or nothing approach of the Billy Graham rule? So she's excited about the announcement. It's a step forward, but it's also, a little bit dated and old school, really. So I thought it was interesting because I came across a couple posts, I won't go through all of them, where people said, oh no, women could be the secretary in Sunday school. Were you guys ever aware of that? Did you guys ever run into that anywhere? Like a male president, 2 counselors, and then a female secretary. And
I barely saw the president. I never saw counselors. I never even knew a secretary existed.
Yeah, apparently she did. She could have been a woman. Yeah. And again, that's also maybe perhaps very sexist. The secretary is the woman, right? Even called a secretary. And then somebody else said that there was somebody once in a singles ward that was called as the president just by a rogue bishop. And the church found out, it was canceled. The policy came out. It can only be men. And she was shamed as if it was somehow her fault when she was only accepting a calling. And these, you guys can freeze on this later, same kind of thing that I just kind of found. People said, yeah, my mom was the secretary, or I know somebody that was once a president. So it seemed like maybe a one-off with certain rogue bishops, but now it's everywhere. And I'm just curious to find out, when the first time is going to happen and what's that going to mean, and will we even hear about it? So final thoughts on this story, RFM first, and then Bill. Women can now serve as Sunday school presidents. And then I'll go into my final slide here.
What do you think, Bill?
I think what you pointed out, RFM, it's a soft little move forward. It doesn't have a whole lot of real meaning other than it shows the church being flexible in ways that it told you in the past it was not flexible at all. But in terms of this calling being important to award, there probably are less than 3% of Sunday school presidents who have ever served in the church who made any real difference in award. At least that's my experience. It sounds like that was your experience as well. But as you point out, we should applaud every one of these little moves. And someday, 200 years from now, 300 years from now, women have a much more significant role in the church, perhaps serving in the highest callings of leadership. And this is one of those steps along the way to get there.
Yeah, they're going to not give women the priesthood as long as they possibly can, and hope that they'll still think that they have the priesthood like they're telling them they do when they don't.
Yeah,
Right.
no, they've really upped that rhetoric, haven't they? That women do hold the priesthood. They do have the priesthood because, on paper, you can see it's so inequitable. And I will say that with my last slide, if I can go to that really quick, we all know the real reason that they are having to do this, right? And I thought this was interesting. I'm friends with a state clerk, and he just shared some stats. This is just out somewhere in a ward, not Utah, not Arizona, not Idaho. So, and I've changed these numbers a little bit, so he isn't implicated, but they are, the ratio is correct. So 3,890 are on the stake membership roll. Of that number, 1,590 are males over 18 with the potential to be ordained to the Melchizedek priesthood. Okay, so you got 1,500 men out there who should be, if they're all active and on the rolls, a Melchizedek priesthood holder. How many of those men are? 579 men have been ordained to the Melchizedek priesthood. This speaks to shrinkage. This speaks to people on the rolls not being ordained. 36% of the men over 18 on the stake membership rolls have been ordained, that should have been ordained to the priesthood. So they just simply do not have the numbers to fulfill the callings that are needed. So they're consolidating so that they can function with a skeleton crew of Melchizedek priesthood holders. And that, I believe, is the real reason that they're doing it. Also, just, it's a bad look. Again, these kind of headlines that say now they can do it begs the question, well, why couldn't they do it yesterday or last week or last year? And what kind of God finally wakes up in the morning and goes, you know what? Today's the day. It was towels last year. It's the Sunday school presidency today. I mean, really? That kind of minutia? Sorry. Final thoughts, and I'm done with this one.
I will say one other reason could be to stem the leaving of females in the church.
Great point.
But if the leaders think this move is going to be the thing that changes the tide, I've got a whole lot of messages for the older gentlemen in Salt Lake that maybe they could use some advice on. So
they keep trying to make as tiny little changes as they possibly can and hope that will stem the flood, and it keeps not.
Was this Utah, Rebecca?
No, like I said, this is somewhere out there in the U.S. It's not Utah, Arizona, or Idaho. And it's just interesting to see those numbers, because to me it says people have stepped away. They're on the record, but, they're not there, or they are attending, but just haven't taken that step. But to not be ordained at age 18 or thereabouts to go on a mission and to be a Melchizedek priesthood holder, that says a lot. That means you're probably not going to continue your life in the church as a priesthood holder. So I thought that was very revealing, just from one tiny little corner of Mormondom.
Well, there's that. Our next story is this AI bill, and RFM, you've got this one for us.
Thank you. I just want to say on that last slide, I didn't know that Steve Rogers was a priesthood holder.
Yeah. Who knows what AI is doing?
It is amazing. LDS church-backed AI bill would make it easier to sue over damaging deep fakes. This is from the Salt Lake Tribune, Robert Gerke, March 3rd, 2026. But now it has passed not only in the Senate, but in the House, and is awaiting what I think is pretty much an expected signature by Governor Cox, thereby making it law in the state of Utah. A bill that would make it easier to sue those who use artificial intelligence to create deep fake images that harm an individual's reputation is breezing through the Utah legislature with the backing of a key supporter, the Mormon Church. Currently, to win a defamation lawsuit in Utah, parties claiming to have been injured have to show they either suffered actual monetary damages or that an individual's image had been used without consent for commercial or advertising purposes. Senate, and I have that slide up there just because that's what that was the lawsuit that John DeLynn filed against Jen Camp, as we recall. Senate Majority Leader Kirk Cullimore, Republican Cottonwood Heights, says his bill aims to fill a gap and give an individual a tool to get AI-generated material that damages someone's reputation, but doesn't necessarily cause tangible financial harm. Okay, I think I have problems with this already. It's going to be interesting if this is a law and is made law, how it's going to be treated by the courts when they have lawsuits, because how are they going to determine damages if it's not reducible to a dollar figure? In other words, if it's not monetary damages, how much is it worth if it hurts your reputation? And how are you going to establish that as well? So I think this is going to have a lot of problems getting worked out in practice. The bill, which has passed the Senate and is awaiting a final vote in the House, where it passed, as I added, gives individuals the exclusive right to their image. If someone uses an individual's image without consent in a way that harms the person's reputation, this sounds like more than just AI, by the way, he or she can demand it be removed within 10 days, and if it is not, can sue for slander or libel. Yeah, that language is not just, this is the article from the newspaper. It is not the bill itself, but it sounds like it's talking about images, period, whether artificial or not. Collimore says, I acknowledge this is new legal territory. Yeah, it is. States are exploring this right now, how to navigate this, but this bill reflects significant input from legal scholars and practitioners. It's a good faith effort to address this middle area that's not really in the law right now. It's pretty tentative language from the guy who's backing this bill. Utah's predominant faith, the Mormon Church, the LDS Church, has been involved in crafting the bill and supports its passage. It's not often the church is that upfront about its backing of a bill. Absent the legislation, someone could use AI to generate a fake video purporting to show a church leader making statements that damage the faith's reputation, and the church would have to show that the video was either used for commercial purposes or demonstrate financial harm in order to sue. Yeah, that's under the regular slander libel laws, right? But now they don't have to just because it damages the reputation in some way. Yeah. This bill, by the way, this also presumes that anybody critical of the church would actually need to fabricate statements stated said by the leaders of the church. Believe me, they say plenty. Too much to keep up with. This bill encourages transparency and avoids intentional deception brought about by AI or AI-generated images. Church spokesperson Doug Anderson said in a statement to the Salt Lake Tribune, using AI to give the false impression that someone has said or done something they have not said or done can harm people, said the guy who represents and is spokesperson for the church with 4 or more First Vision accounts. So I guess it's only if it's done with AI that it's a bad thing. The legislation extends the personal identity right to anyone who has died within the past 70 years, and the right extends 70 years after a person's death. So I think that's their way of going after people who are alive. In other words, if you're alive, then maybe people would think that it's something that you actually said, whereas if you're dead, then they would not. That's what I'm getting out of that. There are exceptions in the bill that would allow someone's image to be used in news coverage, documentary filmmaking, scholarly works, or works of parody or satire. And parody or satire is where you're going to run into trouble. Because if we're talking about the Mormon Church and you got Mormons on the jury and it's in Utah, all I can say is that Mormons are really bad at figuring out what is parody when it comes to their church. Because everything is persecution to a good Mormon. Caden Rosenbaum with the libertarian leaning Libertas. How do you pronounce that, Rebecca?
Libertas.
Thank you. Institute cautioned the bill could have a chilling effect on AI content creators. This could end up being something where the powerful sue those who make AI content about someone else. Not because it's a good case, he said, but because there's enough of a case to make the case. And it's more about settling because you have deep pockets. So it's like everybody's talking about the LDS Church here without actually saying the name of the LDS Church. Cullimore acknowledged, remember, he's the guy who backed the bill. Cullimore acknowledged in an interview the church's interest in the bill, but said it could also help someone whose neighbor posts an AI-generated video that hurts their reputation get the images taken down. So the fact that it can and likely will be abused by a massive corporation in Utah should not dissuade us because your neighbor could use it for different purposes to help them out. Bad argument alert. And church, in other words, if that's really what you're going to do, then draft it in such a way that it's only for the neighbor and it's not going to enable the church to shut people down. And church leaders have urged caution in dealing with artificial intelligence. Remember Elder Gong? In 2024, Apostle Garrett W. Gong acknowledged that some might weaponize AI to make malicious deepfakes of church leaders and urged members to rely on trusted sources and the Holy Spirit to guide them. Now, I've got to tell you, and I'll ask you here as soon as I'm done here. I'll save that one for next. That's the last one in the story, but not yet. I can understand anybody being concerned that somebody's going to use their image in a deep fake to make them say stuff that makes them look ridiculous. And there's going to be some people out there that's going to think it's real. I understand that. It makes sense to me that it should not be allowed or permitted. But then again, what do you think about this, Rebecca? Because I'll tell you my thoughts here after a bit, but I'd like to hear yours first.
Well, I think all of us find ourselves now saying, is that real? Anytime we see or hear or read anything on the news, we have to ask ourselves that now. Is that real? In fact, I came across a late breaking story today having to do with the church that I'll cover next week. And I was like, this has got to be a joke. This has got to be AI. I had to ask myself that. And then I found out, no, it's not. So we'll cover that next time. But it is interesting. And I do understand, their point of view. However, I think about myself, a lot of us make religious commentary through AI. Am I going to get in trouble because I made President Nelson coming out of a birthday cake, right? To make a point about his 100th birthday. Is that kind of thing now going to be off the table? Because you can reach people, with one image making some kind of biting religious commentary, which I tend to do all the time. I also think, look at your own beam in your own eye, LDS Church, because they do use AI for a lot of things and their members use it not so responsibly. We had that story about Bonnie Cordon sending out a Thanksgiving letter to all of the supporters at the Virginia College where she was the president, and it created a quote from President Nelson, and she had to send out another letter and say, I'm really sorry, that was not a quote. I saw a post just yesterday where someone said, oh, this is faithful. Is anybody tired of AI? In our ward, they sent out a flyer. It had a fake quote from President Uchtdorf. It had a two-headed baby chicken. I mean, people themselves within the church, it's so easy to use this. Yeah, I think that was an Easter decoration. But again, it is creating these quotes. Even on the faithful side, as they're preparing lessons and talks that sound close enough, right? So I think they're going to have to look inside as well as outside. But I would be concerned. There has to be a balance because I use it all the time just to make an image that makes a point, right? And I hope people know, okay, no, this is not really President Nelson. He's not really in a giant birthday cake. And I hope they will see the message and the statement I'm trying to convey. So I don't know, but I do see both sides of it.
Well, Bill, I know at one time, I think it was about a year ago, and before that, we used voices of general authorities. In the outro, I think it was to the newscast, maybe it was to a different, and then we stopped doing that. But what are your thoughts?
Well, it's interesting. I've got something here I want to share when you get to the end of this, but in this area of creating news, but also mixed with at times making jokes or parody or satire, which sometimes we do as well. There has to be room to make fun of things, to make jokes about things. And I think sometimes it can be a fine line. I'll give you one example. Maybe 2 years ago, we had a person who was using AI to create videos of things happening in church history. They're little short videos that are on our channel. I forget what the name of them is, but it has to do with AI, latter day AI something. And so latter day DAI. And the videos are on our website, but one of them is of President Nelson when he was prophet, and he's talking about the race and priesthood ban, and he's apologizing for things. And it looks obvious that it's not real. But some people fell for it. I had 4 or 5 people put comments on our channel and go, is this real? Did this really happen? And I thought it would be quite obvious. And so now I wonder in things like this, if this kind of legislation eventually does get moved into being law, where is the line of parody and satire versus something that actually did deceive people, even if unintentionally, and what the consequences of that would be?
Yeah, once again, I'm sort of concerned about the way it's going to be implemented. And if you don't have to show actual damages, then what is the point? I could see this as having maybe been done as an amendment to the slander and libel statute, the defamation statute. and you could add a different subsection that would involve this or mention this, that not only can you be found to have committed slander. Slander is not only saying things about other people that are damaging to their reputation, which you can prove financially, that are not true, but also if you create a video of somebody who's saying things about themselves or others that are not true, that also slander or libel or defame them in some way, that would, to me, have made more sense to put it under the already existing defamation lawsuit, but they're going to make it this way, and I guess we'll just have to see what happens with it. Oh, this was the other thing, Bill, and then we'll get to what you have. This is over at Moroni Channel News. If we needed to know that they're in the tank for the church, this was their take on it. This is just the first sentence. Church of Jesus Christ backs bill against AI deepfakes is the headline. And then they say the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has taken a rare step, into public policy by supporting a Utah measure addressing the misuse of artificial intelligence, particularly deepfake technology. They do this all the time. And some of the times we know about it. And the times we know about it is when the church wants us to know about it because they think that we will think good about them for having supported it. And that's the end of that part. Now, Bill, you had something?
Yeah, I sent you a link this morning in our text group. Not sure if you saw this. Now, I'll say I'm confused because the dating on the Moroni channel is after the date on this. And the date on the original AI issue, this whole thing going through the Utah legislature started off early in the month, March 3rd or something like that. But there were several articles that talked about this one being KSL. I think they're owned by the church. But Utah built a shield against AI harm. This is what I think the case you're talking about. The White House knocked it down. And so Donald Trump in the Trump administration reached out to Utah, according to this. Now, there are some things that are different. You've got HB 256, I think. This one says HB 286. But this is recent. This is, you can see right here on above the picture, March 16th, 2026. Essentially, the White House administration reached out to Utah and let them know that they don't want to do this. And as far as I know, they backed away from it. And so it looks like it was right on the verge, as you point out, of being put into law. And I don't think it's happening now. So
there were nine AI bills that were there. And I believe this one has to do with school and AI that was considered unfixable. And I'm trying to figure it out, don't know the status of the other one that we were talking about or if that was rolled into something to do with this. So it's kind of confusing. We'll have to sort that out. The ending to the story, huh? Yeah.
There were a confusing ending, but I'm glad you brought that up, Bill. Yeah,
there are other ones too. There are SB 149. So there are multiple laws being enacted having to do with AI. It sounds like, as you're right, Rebecca. And at least some of them, the White House is trying to stomp out and stop from happening.
What was that number of that bill?
This one is HB 286. I think you had HB 256. And then another one mentions
this one is SB because it started in the Senate, and yours started. The other one started in the House.
Gotcha. There's also SB 149. So, all right.
Here we go. And drum roll, please. Let me throw it back to you, Bill.
Yeah. Well, this is the next story we've got. LDS Easter Watch. Rebecca, tell us what the church is now doing with Easter.
Yeah, I told you. Well, one more comment on the last story. I feel like taking away the word Mormon and taking away and being so powerfully behind the bill to take away AI. Imagine it would just shut us all down, right? This is what we do. So no, this is my Easter Watch 2026 because people are sending me stuff all the time. Please continue sending it. I just want to make a little mention every Monday until conference what we're doing as far as Easter. This was an interesting one. It's a ward that's going to celebrate Holy Week with the Passover and foot washing. It actually said foot washing. Now, I don't know if this is going to be a demonstration of foot washing or if when you come to the door, they're going to do foot washing. But this to me is a big deal. This was a huge no. You do not represent that. You do not do this. And that is even before information about the second anointing came out, which that ceremony does involve foot washing. And sometimes, this is why my hair is so long, sometimes the drying of the feet, with the woman's hair. So I just thought this was really surprising. Are you guys shocked to see, number one, Good Friday, they're talking about it all over the place, and foot washing? Was that taboo in your experience in the church, or just private?
Feet. Ew.
Yeah. Ew.
It's something that's associated with a very holy ritual. Even if you
Yeah.
don't know about the second anointing, you know about the New Testament and the story of the woman and the washing and the anointing and then the hair, right?
Yeah.
So this is very, very sacred stuff. And
Mhm.
I don't know. Anybody who performs this ordinance is automatically putting themselves in the place of Jesus. And that could have its own, I don't know, its own problems that the church might want to avoid. But you're saying that some wards are doing this anyway?
This is a flyer. It said, come and celebrate Holy Week, learn about the Passover, washing of the disciples' feet, the Last Supper, recreations. So again, I don't know what they're doing, if they're just going to, pantomime it or show it. But the point is, they're openly saying Good Friday. We know what it's all about as Mormons. Sure, we've only been celebrating for, less than a year, but we know, come to our church and find out. So that's interesting. This all of a sudden Good Friday everywhere. Now this, poster or this big banner outside of this church is interesting. Worship with us this Easter, 9 a.m. If you were driving past and saw that, would you think that you could take your whole family back to that building at 9 a.m. on April, is it 5th or 6th, whatever that Sunday is, and attend an Easter service? Yes, RFM.
I'm sorry, it's the 5th.
Oh, the 5th. I thought you were raising your hand. Would
I
you
was.
think you could take your whole family to that church building on Easter? Worship with
Yeah.
us this Easter. I
If you're
would
dumb
too.
enough not to wonder where the cross is on top of the building.
Yes, but here's the point. If you dress your whole family up and take it to that building with that banner, it will be locked on Easter Sunday. What you have to do is scan the QR code on the poster, and then you'll find out that they're talking about the 29th at 9 a.m. So this is my point exactly. You can't hang a banner like that and then not be open for business. I'm just seeing these all over the place. I know it's my soapbox, but I'm sorry. I'm going to make the point till the point is made. Here's somebody who posted on the Faithful site. She said, I know I've seen a lot of people saying they're feeling lonely right now. Maybe this isn't your thing, but I would love to invite anyone who's interested to come to our church Easter service. I will have seats saved for everyone who wants to join. Families can come, my husband, my kids. What day would you think that you should show up to join this wonderful sister at church? You would think it would be Easter Sunday, but no, she's talking about the 29th. And you're not going to know that unless you click on a QR code and go to the details where it says, that's actually Palm Sunday, which isn't Easter. It's a completely different celebration. And I had to put this little, oh, look, here's a picture. It's not AI, but he's saying something he's not normally saying. The actual day, Easter, is more about me, right? Because that's the weekend where there's going to be the solemn assembly and all of that. So I'm just pointing these out that I don't know if the church is aware that putting up banners and information about join us for Easter, they're not doing anything on Easter that people can join. So
this is the problem with pretending to be Christians, is that
Yes.
sometimes people can join your church without realizing you're the Mormons.
yes.
And second, people can go to your church to celebrate Easter and find out that it's actually locked and the doors are shut against them.
Yeah. Now, somebody did make the point, because I post a lot about this. I know people are tired of it, but I just think it's a really interesting scenario this year that shows where their heart truly lies, right? Is it mainstream Christianity or is it Mormonism? And someone said, you know what? You can go into the church. It's not going to be locked. You can go in and you can sit down and you can watch conference. I'm like, okay. I'm pretty sure that would be very foreign to most people that drove by and took their family all dressed up, following the banner into church to sit down and see something on TV, without a service or flowers. So it is very interesting. Keep sending me everything, everybody. I love to just keep a watch on this. So we'll do
What are
it
you going to do next Sunday on Palm Sunday?
next
Rebecca?
Sunday on Palm Sunday. I guess I'm going to have to collect all the flyers and things. You're doing something different though. You're doing something radical, aren't you, RFM?
I'm just going to go to the local church and see what the hell they're doing.
Yeah, that's what I'm telling you. They're waving the fronds, which if my parents are not rolling over in their graves and all the past prophets are not rolling over, I don't know what they're doing, because that is a false tradition of the apostasy. There, I said it.
The apostasy. We're bringing it back.
Make the apostasy great again.
I will say, if I walked into an LDS chapel on Easter Sunday, only to find that what I ended up needing to do was to listen to these old men tell us the things that they're concerning on their minds that have nothing to do with Jesus or the resurrection. I would walk out and go, I think that's a cult.
Yep.
That's
Well,
what
yeah,
I
you
would.
show up and they say, you say, I'm here to celebrate Easter with you. And you say, I'm sorry, you're late. And then the person says, well, I'm sorry, you had a sunrise service. He goes, no, we celebrated it last week.
And they'll say, but that's Palm Sunday. That's not Easter. That has a very special significance that's different from Easter. So
Why didn't you celebrate Easter today? Well, because we have these 15 old men who talk to us every 6 months, and that what they're doing overrides and prioritizes themselves.
exactly.
Yeah.
Perfectly
Well, they
said.
are going to talk about Jesus, and I expect an awful lot. You know, in Mormonism, there's not really that much you can say about Jesus before you begin repeating yourself.
But it's going to be third Nephi. That's what they're more comfortable with. You know what I mean? They sound awkward when they talk about Jesus in the New Testament. It's just kind of awkward. Can I make one little comment? I just got a note from our friend Martine. That bill has been signed by the governor. So just to update that. Yeah, really quick. Thank you. We're crowdsourcing the news tonight.
I guess we got to be a lot more careful going forward, don't we?
Yes.
All right. All right. Next story here is the first Canadian female LDS chaplain. So the LDS Church has now endorsed its first female chaplain in Canada. This isn't the first female chaplain. It is the first female chaplain in Canada, with Becky Mantanen serving at a women's prison in Kitchener, Ontario. She was called in 2025 as a service missionary and had worked alongside chaplains from other faiths, offering spiritual support, counseling, leading scripture study groups for inmates. She comes from a background in nursing and social work and has already been volunteering in the prison before stepping into this role. The church highlighted her as uniquely prepared for the assignment, and she is currently one of just 4 Latter-day Saint chaplains serving across Canada. So they only have 4 chaplains. One of them is a female, but this did remind me to go back and find when the first female chaplain came into the church. And so back in 2014, the church formally created a centralized system to endorse chaplains, and that approval did include women. It took time for that opening to turn into real opportunities, and by 2022, we see the first female military chaplain, Jenna Carson, officially endorsed, and now in 2026, we're seeing that expand into places like prison ministry in Canada. Still, it's hard not to notice how gradual the shift has been. For many years, roles like this simply weren't visible or accessible to women in any meaningful way. This goes back to our Sunday school story about the Sunday school presidency now being allowed to be females. While in the past, hardline policies preventing such were implied to be God's hardline stance, it is now understood by the nature of such shifts as these and that Sunday school presidency that nothing explicitly doctrine, such as, what I mean by that is doctrine, aka God's eternal will, that which is eternal and doesn't change, that there's nothing explicitly doctrine that barred them. Moments like this feel like progress, but they also gently remind us how often change in the church comes slowly and how many capable people may have been ready long before the system was. Again, I don't think there's much to say here. You're welcome to share comments, but just to go along with the Sunday school presidency news, you are seeing the church utilize women in other roles as well. They are often one-off things that don't seem like a priesthood calling, such as Sunday school presidencies, a chaplain who is often serving the larger general community rather than just Latter-day Saints, for instance. But I will ask, any thoughts from you guys before I move on to the next story?
Do they have to get permission from the church to serve in this capacity in another organization or a system?
My understanding is that when chaplains are called in some role that is connected to the church, and in this instance, it appears as though that's the case, it does require church approval, but women are now on the list of people who can be approved for these responsibilities.
So it's connected and through the church, because I was thinking that would be something if you were like serving in the military and you wanted to be a chaplain, has nothing to do with the church, and you had to check with your church in order to, accept that kind of a role. So I agree with you, Bill. I think, look, they're letting women serve other places outside of the LDS church. We'll let them do that. It's again something that they can point to. Look, women do this and this and this and this. But anytime you have to make a list like that, it means there's not equity right there. If you have to point out what women are doing, that means that they're not doing what men are doing. So again, a good step, but let's do more.
Yeah. RFM, anything from you?
Yeah, I just wonder what happens when a poor soldier needs a blessing.
He's not getting it from her.
That is interesting.
Yeah. Maybe those don't work anyway. So, by the way, we've been talking lots today about women being able to do things. I wonder, Rebecca, in this next story, are we going to talk about women not being able to do things?
Yes, I felt like all my stories this week were about things that were canceled, right? But that's okay. That's great. So this was another big event here in Utah. It's the Journal of Mormon Polygamy Conference. And, the way to explain it is it's founded by Michelle Stone and Cheryl Bruno. And it's kind of interesting because they're almost like the odd couple, opposites attract. Cheryl Bruno believes, like many of us here on the newscast, that Joseph Smith had multiple plural wives and was a practicer of polygamy. Well, Michelle Stone believes, I guess called monogamy affirmer. She believes that Joseph Smith was monogamous, and many of the things that we look at as proof were backdated, were created later. He was thrown under the bus. He was set up, this kind of a thing. So they have this journal that's been going for a couple years, and this is actually their second conference where they gather all kinds of people together and they discuss this topic. Now, some people there are monogamy affirmers, polygamy deniers. Others are, what would you say, monogamy affirmers? I'm confused. Either he did or he didn't. And all those kinds of people were there at the conference. So there was a big write-up about this in the Tribune. The title is "A Utah Conference That Questions If the LDS Church Founder Joseph Smith Really Was Polygamous is Causing an Uproar." And it sure was. Disclaimer, this is an AI generated picture of Joseph Smith and some of his lovely polygamous wives.
He's been dead for over 70 years, so you're in the
I
clear,
would
Rebecca.
hope. See, that's what I mean. I always assume people must know it's AI, but maybe they don't. So this was the second annual conference. It was very well attended. Our friend Steve Pinecker flew in and moderated a panel there. So there were lots of kind of people. They said that they welcome anyone from either side of the debate who want to present research, including people from outside of the faith. A lot of people are very interested in this topic of polygamy. And like I said, the two of them are on opposite sides. You can see all the speakers, and some of the topics are adjacent, like the wonderful Margaret Toscano talked about Mother in Heaven, something that she was ultimately excommunicated for talking about back in the day. So all kinds of different things. They had a panel you can see on the John Taylor 1886 Revelation. That came out within the last year, and that was a big deal, saying the church will continue to be polygamous. So again, all kinds of points of view on this. Let's see. It talks about how to submit papers. So where the controversy kind of erupted is that, as the Tribune says, leading up to the event, several scheduled speakers withdrew as the conference drew closer, and there was more heat on them. And it's true. I am aware of several that had said they were going to speak from the faithful side, and they suddenly withdrew, right? That criticism has included local faith leaders who allegedly told participants that attending could result in discipline, right? So scholars have asked to speak. They're going to speak, and their church leader allegedly reaches out and says, no, you're not going to. And they talk about, threatening excommunication. Michelle Stone said that she herself received a letter from the faith's leaders about 2 weeks ago. And if you're not familiar with Michelle, we've covered her for quite a long time. She had a channel called 132 Problems, which was pretty big, put out lots of content, and church leaders told her to take it down. She did take it down, all of her content. I mean, it was I can't imagine if somebody told me to take everything I've done down, it would be absolutely gut-wrenching. But she did it, yet she continues with the journal, and she continues to write and to study and to support the conference here. So she said she received a letter from the faith's leaders about 2 weeks ago advising her that her hosting the conference would likely be considered apostasy. She said she has navigated the issue for now, and is moving forward. And she seems to be in a situation with her particular bishop and stake president roulette, where she is able to sort of work through this, because she's been close to that brink several times and seems to have been able to dial it back. So before we go to what happened next, have you guys heard of this conference? What are your thoughts? Bill first, then RFM.
You know, people should get the right in a religious system to have different ideas about things. I think it is an absurd position, but all these folks are doing is believing Joseph Smith at his word. It's a strange thing that the church is uncomfortable with people believing their prophet telling the truth. And again, Cheryl's on one side of this issue, Michelle's on the other. There were folks, I guess, on both sides that were speaking. I think dialogue around ideas where all sides are allowed to be presented is the best way. It's not optimal, but it's the best way we have at getting at the truth. And I think things like this are good for figuring this stuff out. But I can see why the church is uncomfortable with their founder telling the truth, because if he did, then that means a lot of things for those who came after him.
Yeah, and I think that that's exactly it. The leaders aren't so much concerned that they're saying good things about Joseph, but that they're also saying at the same time very bad things about Brigham Young all the way up to President Oaks.
Yeah.
And so it's really difficult. It's a difficult situation they're in. I would say that you had said, Rebecca, I think trying to be very magnanimous, that Cheryl believes that Joseph Smith practiced polygamy, and Michelle believes he did not. These are not matters of faith, okay? Not for those who believe that he practiced polygamy, because that's based upon the historical record. Yes, he practiced polygamy, Joseph Smith. The people who want him to not have practiced it do believe it in spite of the evidence. And their belief and the persistence of their belief is shown by their willingness to go every possible way around and mental gymnast they can about all the evidence that shows that he practiced polygamy. So that's my take on it. That's a belief. The other's not.
Yeah, no, that's true. I was trying to be magnanimous, because you're right. The mental gymnastics and the vast conspiracy stretching over 150 years. It's a lot. It's a lot to take in. But I will say, I think the value of this group and the conference is the church has had to come out and say things they have never said before about Joseph's polygamy. That has been shocking to all of us. The polygamy cartoon and some of the statements, some of the changes in the topics, gospel topics essays, where they come out and have to say, no, he really did. He did. And that is news still to some people. And they might think it's AI, but there's a lot more information. Even citing the Nauvoo expositor in those affidavits as a credible source, things like that we just can't even wrap our brain around. So they're definitely putting the fire to the feet of the church to come out and say, okay, we've tried to suppress it all these years. This is a real thing. So something really interesting happened in RFM, and I've been talking about this behind the scenes quite a bit. So with their conference last year, they had a training session that 30 or so people signed up for at the University of Utah, where they got to go into their special collections, look at documents, learn some research techniques, and work with some of the librarians, right? And that is the job of a librarian. The job of somebody in special collections would be to let groups come in, provide training, show some cool documents, that kind of thing. That's what you do when you are a librarian. So apparently Michelle Stone and her group had set up a training like this at BYU to happen a few days before the conference officially started. 30 people, I think, had signed up to go, and she had collected, I think, $20 from each just to hold a spot, kind of a thing, to make sure people were serious. And she had been communicating with a librarian there in the special collections department since November about this training. And the back and forth was very positive. If you go to their Journal of Polygamy website, you can see their statement about what happened, and also look at the emails. I'm going to show a few here. But they were excited to do the training. She told them they wanted to especially look at a certain Helen Mar Kimball letter, and also learn some researching techniques and more about some of the church history documents that were there. And everything was great. They were going to attend. They were excited, just like they did the year before. Then, just a few days before the conference, late at night after business hours, I think maybe it was 5 o'clock, they received an email. And I'm going to read you these emails saying, we're not going to do that. You're not coming to the BYU library. You cannot come here. So look how interesting these are. And I'll just read these really quick because they're fast. And it wasn't the librarian that they had been working with. That's what's interesting. It was the library administrator, right? It was a higher up in the hierarchy, not the special collections librarian that they had planned the training with. So Michelle gets this letter. Yeah, it was at 5:30. I'm writing regretfully to inform you that we will not be able to provide training for your pre-conference workshop this Friday, nor can we provide space for your group to meet in the BYU library. Now that's interesting. There's a lot of space there. I used to work there. I know all the spaces in the BYU library. I realized that the timing of this decision, just like 2.5 days before, puts you in an awkward position, particularly as you have collected money from conference delegates who intended to attend the workshop. In parentheses, for what it's worth, if we had known that you were going to charge a registration fee for the workshop, we would have pulled the plug much earlier. I apologize for the timing. Best wishes from the university librarian, the head honcho. Okay. So Michelle's stunned. She's got these people coming. It wasn't a problem last year at the U. It wasn't a problem during the whole time that she was discussing it with the librarian who was going to give the training. Why is now an administrator reaching in and saying no? So she writes back. And she says, hi, Rick, thanks for the email. We had no idea that charging a nominal reservation fee would be a problem for the library. I appreciate you letting me know. We are in the process of refunding the small charge to each attendee. I am glad to know it is an easily resolved concern, since canceling at this part would be extremely unprofessional. Thank you for the email. We're looking forward to the training. So she took the angle, whether she believed it or not, that the initial email was just saying, hey, because you charged a fee, we can't do it. She's like, oh, I'm so sorry for the misunderstanding. We are not charging a fee anymore. We'll see you at the training, right?
Not Michelle, Bill, excuse me for making that mistake. Bill, you were shaking your head and smiling. And I was too the first time she was reading this thing to me from Michelle. What were you thinking?
Well, again, I'll save the surprise. I know it's up on the screen. Folks can read if they want to. But when you read the first email, it seems like what he's saying is, I have to cancel this. If I would have known about this reservation fee, I would never have gone ahead with this in the first place. So it's really smart of Michelle. Good job, Michelle. It was really smart of her to hold his feet to the fire and go, is that the real reason? Because if it is, we've resolved that. And then the reason I'm laughing is because I know what the third part is, and I'll let you read it, Rebecca, the final email from Rick Anderson.
Yeah, and I did think this is something I would do too. It's kind of passive aggressive, but it's like, if you're going to do this, you're going to say it out loud and you're going to say it to my face. You're not going to hide behind anything else. You're going to tell me what you're doing and why. And
see, Bill, I think she's just being intentionally obtuse, and the response that she gets is obvious. I think she's playing 1D chess.
Yeah, I don't know. I think she's trying to make him say it because they don't say things and everybody plays all nicey. And you sometimes have to say, what's the real reason? And sometimes I'm telling you, women, this is what we kind of have to do behind the scenes to get a straight answer. I know it's terrible. Okay. So she wrote that. And this conversation all took place within like a 20-minute time period here. And he wrote back, hi, Michelle, sorry, I wasn't sufficiently clear. No, you weren't. Now we're going to make you be clear. We are unable to go forward with the training session in our library. I apologize that we have to cancel with such short notice, but I'm writing to let you know the session is canceled. And that's it. There you go.
You didn't get it the first time.
Over. That's right. It's over. So, they put out a big statement. And as I understand it, a lot of their conference kind of had this tone to it where they're like, we are persecuted. People are against our research. This proves that Joseph Smith did not practice plural marriage. See, they're right. Yes, that's what I was going to say. What are they hiding? Why did they do this? It just gives fuel to this fire. But it is an interesting question that I want to ask you both about. And RFM and I have talked about it. One side of it is, well, gosh, they know that this is not the university's point of view and the church runs the university. You shouldn't go in there with this point of view. Then my point of view is, I understand that, but also they're supposed to be a research library. They are supposed to have controversial materials for research purposes, and you should not direct what the end result, unlike what's his name, who said that, was it Muhlstein? Yeah, that you come up with your conclusion and then research to get there. You shouldn't do that. You need to research to where it goes. And if
I'm
they
sorry,
want
I
to
thought you
learn,
were talking about BYU library.
yeah, I am.
Yeah, they've never acted that way.
No, I know. I'm saying no, do you know what? I worked in that library, and back in the late 80s and the 90s, they did have controversial materials, and they did want people to research, and they were a lot more open than they are now. So I'm just saying that a research library in general should be their goal. That's what they should do. So I do see both sides of it. RFM, what do you think? You had some heated opinions on this.
Well, you showed me her application. And she
Yes.
was obviously going in there sailing under false colors. And so they finally figured out shortly before the ship landed, before the Spanish Armada made London, that who she was and what's going on. And Rick Anderson is the guy who's in charge. And he's saying, no, it's not happening. You're not coming to this library. We're not giving you any training because we're not going to allow you to say that you were trained at BYU Library Special Collections and use us to bolster your theories, which we do not agree with. That's what I think.
Yep. And that's a valid side of it for sure. What do you think, Bill?
I think the other side of this, again, I don't know all the backstory. Maybe the way she presented it was so dishonest, and I don't know that, but what you're indicating, RFM, it was so dishonest that there was an ethical move here made. But I will just say, if you're a research library, it's not your job to deem which conclusions you're supportive of. You have a responsibility to, if you're going to allow one side, you have a responsibility to allow all sides in, allow them to look at documents, the ones that are allowed to be looked at, allow them to look at documents, and give people, all sides, the chance to have information and to write their books and take their positions regardless. Whether it's Dan Vogel or D. Michael Quinn or Terrell Givens or Patrick Mason, we should support, as a church, people having as much information as possible so that their opinions and perspectives are as informed as possible. You can't dictate what side people come down on that use research materials out of a library. I'll also say, too, they agreed to put on a training session. They agreed to let them come in and show them some documents, show them how they work with documents. I don't see how the final conclusion of any particular person showing up at that should detract from them still doing this thing that they do.
Well, I'm just saying that if I had a library and Michelle had, made this arrangement without my knowing, I would tell her, no, you're not coming. I would not want her theory and her name and her journal associated with my library's thing.
Yeah, and people are making this comment in the comment section here, and it's true. BYU, private, owned by the church. I feel like maybe what happened is, special collections, when I was there, they did trainings all the time. Groups would come in, they'd apply, and it's true in the emails, the person that was going to lead the training said, now, who are you? What's your group? And she kind of said, oh, we're this, and we're sponsored by UVU History Department, and we're this and that, so I don't know that they understood exactly, perhaps what the group was exactly. And so I picture maybe that then just, the administration got wind of, hey, what training's going on this week? And they're like, oh dear, I don't know if anything came down from the top. It's possible. There was some news out of BYU today. If you guys saw my short, I'm going to cover it next week on the newscast, where they are locking down tighter than a drum, any kind of scholarship or any kind of thinking for yourself. So I wouldn't put it past him, but it's an interesting question. Despite all of that, and that being kind of a tone at the conference, as I was told, they were very excited about the results of the conference. And they have put out some exciting memes to tell everybody how successful it was. This one says the 3 pillars of Mormon polygamy, section 132, late hand testimonies, and Brian Hales after the Journal of Mormon Polygamy conference completely obliterated.
I'm sure it was a hell of a conference.
Yes,
it destroyed everything.
They have destroyed everything. After that, their other meme.
I don't see the land deeds pillar there.
Yeah,
I don't see the Nauvoo expositor and
maybe that's for the next conference. I don't know. And then another meme they put out said the Joseph Smith Foundation in a state of mind-blown shock after reading Michelle's latest paper debunking Helen Mar Kimball as one of Joseph's supposed wives.
Yeah, I'm sure she really did a great job at that.
Yeah. So they were thrilled at the outcome of the conference, and I'm sure we'll hear more about it. But anyway, I thought that was just a fascinating question to kind of mull over. Should they have been able to attend that training?
By the way, I hope that nobody thinks that I actively dislike Michelle Stone.
Oh,
Okay.
no, she's lovely.
Well, I wouldn't go that far. But but I'm glad that you would. All I'm saying is, if you go back a ways on RFM, I have interacted with her and her research, and I'm going to put those in heavy boldface quotation marks, okay? Her research, and it is so extraordinarily bad that I have great doubts as to whether she has really ruled out, who was it? Was it Helen Mar Kimball?
Yeah, not a polygamous wife.
Whoa. You see, everything for her is a problem to get around.
Just push it away.
The evidence is no impediment to her.
Yes.
All right. She's never seen a fact that she can't get around in order to arrive at her predetermined conclusion. Yeah. And pretty much the same with everybody else who's of a similar mind.
Yeah. I've got one more thing I want to mention here about this story. We'll jump into the next one. I just want to know, looking at this image, I just want to know how difficult it was for Joseph Smith to get started into polygamy. It was so difficult.
So hard.
It took an angel with a drawn sword. It was so hard, Rebecca.
So hard.
An angel with a drawn sword, flaming maybe, had to convince him. Now, I got two questions. Well, one question and a statement. First off, notice the smile on that face. And the question, where is that right arm and right hand by extension?
So, we don't want to know.
All right. With that, court removes Parker Kingston's GPS monitor. Tell us about former BYU football player Parker Kingston, RFM.
I'm going to make this really short and sweet, okay? It was set to have a preliminary hearing today. It got bumped a week, and the judge took off his GPS monitor by agreement of the parties. It was ridiculous that he had to wear a GPS monitor in the first place. I mean, as a defense attorney and a prosecutor before that, I'm well aware of going into court on a case like this. The reason I say this is because the prosecutor waited a year to file charges against this guy. And then they claim how dangerous he is. Well, the correct response to that is, if he was so dangerous, why did you take a year to file charges against him and just leave him roaming around out in the community? So sometimes prosecutors get caught in that double bind, that two-faced appearance. So they did that at the initial appearance, but then they woke up, smelled the job, and said, yeah, he doesn't need to have this. He's still excluded from going into the county down there. Is it Washington County, Bill?
Mm-hmm.
If it's Southern Utah, it's Washington County.
Yeah, it's Washington County. So he's still forbidden from going in there, but they said, we don't need the GPS. The guy is, he's compliant, and he's not, he doesn't appear to be the danger that maybe we made him out to be at the very beginning. He's still facing very serious charges, and that case will proceed. And then they'll have next week their preliminary hearing where apparently they present the case in front of a judge. And the judge has to do what with it? Find probable cause, I'm guessing. Once again, this is very different from the way things are up here. Every state's different. But down there, apparently prosecutors can file charges willy-nilly, and only when it gets to the preliminary hearing does a judge hear evidence and make a determination as to whether there's actually a basis for the charges to be filed in the first place. Up here, the judge makes that determination before the charges are filed, which I tend to think makes a little more sense to me.
Yeah, then it's not weighed in the media, right? Because before the judge could easily just throw everything out right there. Did you find anything in what you read? Because I only skimmed these articles about the alleged victim's statement. I know that was a question. Were they going to let that be read?
Apparently, they're going to let it be read, and that's agreed as well.
Okay.
That's my understanding from this.
Okay.
And then we have, that was my thing about 1 year later. And there's a few other things that we've already gone over before. But the main thing is GPS is gone, and the preliminary hearing was kicked a week. And then we'll see what evidence they present and what ruling the judge makes. Although I expect this is going to be more for the defense to find out what kind of evidence the state has against them and to be able to probe it a bit with cross-examination. I don't think there's any chance that with a young woman saying that this happened, that the judge is not going to find probable cause, and the case will continue to trial. Oh, here's Gilbert Bates, some guy who made a comment on this story. Is there any info on the impact these charges have on his temple wedding? He just got engaged 2 months ago. Just asking. Do you know anything about that, either of you?
Yeah, I don't know what happened, but he did get engaged. He was such a menace to society roaming around that he got engaged. And then it was just a few days later, right after he was on the Jumbotron at a BYU game announcing the engagement, that then all this arrest happened. So I don't even know if he's still engaged. If anybody knows, let us know. That could have been broken off. I do not know.
It might have been broken like that Taylor Pauley engagement.
There's a lot of broken engagements and things that are canceled on this particular episode of the newscast.
Yeah. Okay, so that's that story. Any comments from you, Bill? I am handing it back to you officially.
All right. No, I think that BYU football players will from time to time show up in the news with behaviors that are less than exemplary. So to be expected. Anything from you, Rebecca? Otherwise, I'll just jump into it. Okay. All right. Next story here is I don't know why the color. Let me add this one. All right. So a new Netflix docuseries, Trust Me, The False Prophet, premieres April 8th and tells the story of Samuel Bateman, a breakaway fundamentalist Mormon leader who led a small polygamous group along the Utah-Arizona border. The series follows a couple who went undercover inside the group, secretly recording what they witnessed and helping expose Bateman's abuse. Bateman claimed prophetic authority after the fall of Warren Jeffs, took more than 20 spiritual wives, where have we heard that before, including underage girls. In 2022, authorities arrested him after finding young girls hidden in a trailer, and by 2024, he was sentenced to 50 years in prison for kidnapping and sexual abuse. After Jeffs was imprisoned, there was a leadership vacuum, and Bateman stepped right in, claiming new revelation and authority. Anyone see a pattern? A man claims to speak for God. Followers are taught to trust him over their own judgment, and obedience becomes the measure of faithfulness. That sounds like most of my time in the church. The mainstream church clearly rejects groups like this, but the structure they draw from is not completely unfamiliar. Stories like this nudge us to reflect about how religious authority works and what safeguards are needed so that belief and trust are not used to control or harm. Anything there? I wasn't familiar, by the way, with Samuel Bateman, and I'm actually quite interested to watch this little docuseries. So any thoughts from you guys on Sam Bateman and him taking over the reins after Warren Jeffs?
Yeah, I remember when he was arrested, but back then in 2022, we didn't have the newscast, or, we weren't really doing that with news, so we didn't really follow it that closely. But yes, the Mormon moment, this is going to be big. I have been reading about this and watched several scenes and clips from it. It's going to be really hard to watch. Like, these guys were in there. They were part of it. They gained their trust. They were treated like family, and Sam loved the camera. He had no problem letting them film everything and talk about everything he was doing, a complete narcissist. And so this is going to be, how we all had a hard time with keep sweet, pray and obey and all that. This is going to be even worse because the footage, you're just going to live it. And even watching the clips, some of the scenes I saw were really, really difficult to watch because it's so right there in your face as these people lived among them and filmed everything they saw. And again, it's just continuing the Mormon moment, because a lot of people don't understand there's a difference between the mainstream LDS church or the FLDS, or at least they'll say, isn't this what Mormons used to do? Maybe like 20 years ago, this is another messy, messy Mormon moment. And the hits just keep coming in that way, because Mormons are fascinating, not only currently, but their history. There's a lot there. And I think that media in general has discovered this, right? That it's a gold mine, basically. So yeah, we'll watch this. We'll report on this, but it's going to be difficult to watch. So everybody gear up, or self-care, don't watch it all.
Well, I guess it just goes to show that prophets will not always be popular.
No.
Just like President Nelson said. I say that with tongue in cheek, but President Nelson did say that. And that's part of the ethos of this church, for the prophets, for the members, for the polygamy deniers, for everybody. If you're persecuting us, it's because we're right, because we're on God's side, because God will not stand up for his people against persecution. He'll just let them get persecuted right and left. That's why it proves that we're true. But it's that whole idea, right? The same idea this guy's working, the Bateman guy. Yeah, absolutely. I'm being persecuted because I'm telling the truth. And you will not always be popular if you're a prophet. So it's the same idea, just in a different context, and it works just as well.
I will say to what you said, Rebecca, this Mormon moment, I just think at some point, not too far off in the distance, is a historical TV series done on the life of Joseph Smith and early Mormonism. When I see the other shows that have been done with a historical angle to them, there is so much interesting things in Mormonism that I've got to believe somebody will eventually tackle that as a project. And I'm curious what Latter-day Saints will do in that day when that shows up. But with that, that's our last story. We jump on here at the end to promote some of the things that we're working on. And let's start with Mormonish.
Woohoo. Yep. Always on Tuesday night at 6 p.m. Mountain Time. We have a really fun episode this Tuesday tomorrow with Suspicious Mite. We've had him on before. He's never on camera, so it's always just a black screen, but he crunches data. He finds things. You guys have probably run across him on Reddit. He is able to get into all these church sources that nobody else can. And we're going to be talking about the LDS Church wants to put you to work and you pay. You may think you know what kind of senior missions or service missions are available. We're going to talk about some pretty unbelievable things that they have the nerve to ask people, especially senior people, to do, and then to have them pay to do it. It's kind of jaw-dropping, humorous, but then not so humorous when a lot of us have parents, friends, and family that sign up for this and to me are exploited in these ways, even though they love doing it and think they're getting the blessings. So this will be tomorrow night, Tuesday, 6 p.m. Mountain Time. The church wants to put you to work and you get to pay. So tune in.
Excellent. And Wednesday, RFM, what are you and I doing at General Conference?
What are we doing? We're doing a great show. This is the show that we're going to do 4 weeks ago, but it got continued because of reasons beyond our control. This is a big deal. Did this man commit a felony? This is the guy who gives the financial report, or at least used to. I think his name is Jared B. Larson. I can't remember exactly. But it is a question. It is not stated, but it is a question. And we're going to be bringing on a special guest who actually has to hide his face and his name in order to tell his story. He's a CPA, and he's going to go into what has happened in the background and whether this man committed a felony, and actually whether several other men committed felonies, and whether they're going to be held to account before the licensing boards that have to license them in order for them to engage in professional activities for the church. So this is going to be very, very exciting. And that's it.
Well, if he does lose his license, I'm sure there's a mission president opportunity and then a general authority position in the Quorum of the 70, and eventually emeritus position where one can continue to ensure that they are paid and can feed the family and pay the mortgage.
Yeah, and I wanted to put the two red arrows pointing to that guy so that somebody, wouldn't make the obvious joke. Oh, me or you? Did this man commit a felony? No, it's the guy that the arrows are pointing to. Thank you very much.
There you go. And then Thursday, the next episode in the series that I'm doing on a logical deconstruction of Mormonism will be the Book of Mormon translation. We'll talk about the spectacles, the seer stone, the hat, and the treasure digging, all that and more. Thursday morning, that will show up. And then Friday, you've got Mormonism After Dark, Radio Free Mormon.
Yeah, I do. And it really came home to me last Friday night after the show and watching it, how important this show is. Because here I don't just talk to you about Mormonism. Here we get together and we fellowship in the post-Mormon lounge. We hang out with people who've been there, who've done it, who've gone through all this stuff and live to tell the tale. And now we're going to socialize and relax a little bit and know that we are not alone.
Excellent. Friday, 8 p.m. for that. And then Saturday in the evening, you've got a Radio Free Mormon episode coming out.
Yes, I do.
And this one
that was
here,
actually last Saturday.
Yep, this is the one that just came out last week.
Yeah, Mormon Bishop rebels. That's Nathan. That's Nathan Hinckley right there. It's a great show. He's a great guy. I even get Amy, his wife, on there. And I keep talking about how excited I am about that because I don't think she's been on a podcast yet. She's very retiring, but I kind of wheedled my way, and she showed up at the beginning, and then she stayed on for, I'd say, around half. She's there, and then she's gone. Then she's there, and then she's gone. And at first, she's in the house in a chair. Then she goes. And the next time, she's on the porch for a while, and then she's gone. Next time, she's driving down the road in Tennessee, So it's great. There's a lot of action. She has a lot of great things to say, and so does her husband, Nathan. It's a really good show. So he was a bishop. He's no longer a bishop, and he has a lot of thoughts about the LDS Church. And I think we can all benefit from hearing those.
Normally, we're showing your previous episode because you are putting it together sort of end of the week. But in this instance, I did see on StreamYard, you've got the stream created for your episode this week. Do you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, it's because I'm going to record it tomorrow, but it'll release on Saturday night. Yeah, it's this guy named Jonathan Lunwall. You ever heard of him, Rebecca?
Oh, maybe a little.
We're going to talk about not just the Book of Mormon as a grimoire, okay? Spell book, casting, summoning, spirits, demons, angels, things like that, grimoire. But we're going to take that not only from the Book of Mormon, which you did on your Mormonish, when you presented for the first time last Tuesday, it was, right? So that was 3 hours and 20 minutes. It was very, very long. I watched the whole thing in pieces, and then I watched it back all the way through so I could understand what it was that he was saying. I think it's a fascinating theory. And I talked to him and I said, hey, would you like to hear my idea about how the temple endowment is also a treasure quest? And he said, tell me. So I told him. He says, I agree with you, because he'd been thinking about this too. This is another part that he's going to be presenting further down the road. So we're going to get to that on the next RFM show. So we're going to do a brief recap on the Book of Mormon because it's very important that get out there, I think, to as many people as possible. Then we're going to segue to the Mormon Temple and show how that is a treasure quest with a very magic element to it when you look at it from the 20,000-foot view.
All right. Well, excellent. That is the stuff that's coming out this week. Tonight was the Mormon Newscast. Thank you very much for the stories that both of you brought. We will see everybody next Monday, 6 p.m. Otherwise, check out the other stuff we're doing. Please like and subscribe. Go to Mormonish, go to the Mormon Discussion channel, and donate. RFM, myself, Rebecca, we put a lot of time and energy into carrying out these conversations, making sure that we stay up to date on the news. Primarily Rebecca, who does a heck of a good job of doing that, staying on top of the news. So, folks, thank you so much for watching, for tuning in, and we'll see all of you next time. Good night.
That's a wrap for this week's edition of the Mormon Newscast. We appreciate you tuning in and sharing this time with us. Keep the conversation going and stay informed on all things Mormonism. Until next week, wishing you peace and joy. See you next Monday at 6 p.m. on the Mormon Newscast.